Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Hey, lovely morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on another edition of Morning Spring, coming to you from Western Spring Television. It's good to be back here, and it's good to have you join us on Morning Spring and Western Spring Television. Femi Olanikwekun is my name, and with me here this morning again.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us on the Morning Spring and Western Spring Television. I'm Temitope Adijalaoluola, and you know that you can join us on all our social media handles, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can live stream our programs on YouTube, Western Spring Television. And you can check us out on the DTT platform of Star Times, channel 190. Thanks for joining us again. Good morning.
Well, so it's an interesting month. This is the month where the president-elect gets sworn in. All of the issues about if he's going to be sworn in or not, I'm afraid it might not work anyway. But Emmanuel is not here today, so I'll be doing this together for the next few days, if you like. But we'll promise you to have a swell time as usual on Morning Spring. We're bringing you up to speed about events all across the country, taking you through the pages of our newspapers, and also be speaking to our guests, having very frank conversations with them for you to be better informed. So that's how we begin the show this morning. We'll go on this short break. When we return, we'll be bringing you the newspapers.
Let's stay with us.
All right, so let's begin with the papers this morning. Daily Trust newspaper is what we'll start with. Aspirants move against Tinubu's anointed candidate. That's the drama ahead of the, the leadership, the election of the leadership of the National Assembly, the 10th National Assembly. And what we have here is speakership. Aspirants move against Tinubu's anointed candidate. With the riders what attracted me to President-elect Abbas. We were not consulted. Wase's camp. Endorsement, mere speculation. Gaji. Betara declares today. Not central. Spoils for fight. But this is the banner headline on the front page of the Daily Trust this morning. It's talking about the leadership tussle. It's talking about the drama and, the all of the how do you put it now? The wheeling, dealing, people making moves, smart moves, deft moves to try and outwit each other, one another, to become the next presiding officers of the 10th Assembly.
Yes, we've been talking about it on the show for quite a time now, and it's some of the papers have said Tinubu had no candidate, and today it's showing that perhaps Tinubu has an anointed candidate, but other aspirants are moving against it. And we're talking about zoning differently, talking about moving it to the North Central, different things and all. And North was saying they deserved it because they gave Tinubu the most, votes. But now we're seeing lots of, tussle and people willing to clinch that particular position. But then we'll know who wins at the end, in some days. and that may be just before the swearing in.
Well, of course, but the election itself will not be done until the first week of June.
Yes.
Because the president started to release a proclamation to set up the 10th National Assembly. So that's when the members will be sworn in themselves, and then they will now decide to elect one of them as the primus inter pares, in this case, to lead. But from what we are seeing, and this has happened before, in time past, when the party or the leadership of the party anoints a candidate, other members who have an ulterior motive or who feel, I'm not going with this party's instruction, can decide to do. And the way the spread is for these current National Assembly members elect, it's an interesting demographic. For the House, for the Senate, for instance, I think the APC has 59, and then the other opposition parties, PDP, LP, they have 50. So if you're able to get some 10 members from the APC who will not do the bidding of the APC, you can see, it could upset whatever arrangement, that the APC has.
Yes, and Emmanuel has pointed it time severally on the show that it's going to be an interesting time, this particular, the 10th Senate. And, the fact that you're going to have different, opinions in the House is going to make it really interesting at the end of the day.
Well, so, we are waiting to see how the moves will be. Elsewhere on the Daily Trust newspaper, just below the nameplate of the paper, Tribunal begins hearing Atiku Obi 3 other petitions today. That is today. And mixed feelings in Kano over Kwankwanso's statement on Sanusi's dethronement, 77 trillion naira debt, a fuel subsidy, 3 other issues Tinubu will inherit from Buhari. And also here, NAFDAC raises alarm over importation of banned pesticides from UK. Man beats son to death for stealing 1 mudu of millet. That's quite shameful. Very disappointing. Learn from Sudan experience. NSCIA tells Nigerians, and 144 passengers unhurt as Max airplane crash lands in Abuja. I saw the pictures of that yesterday. The tire blown off, and many flights cancelled. Safety Bureau probes incident. Thankfully, there were no fatalities other than, the fire, and then they tired up the bus. But just before we move to the other paper, the key news today is about the tribunal, which is beginning hearing today, and Atiku and Obi and 3 other petitions today.
Yeah, true. And then just before we go, I'd just like to talk about this story on page 7 that says, learn from Sudan experience, and SCIA tells Nigerians. I think everyone, all the parties, the government and the people have lots to learn from the Sudan experience. And the fact that governments are not doing the bidding of the people could upturn the normal flow of things in the society. And now people too have seen that to vie for unity in the country is better than, spurring up different violence everywhere. And so it's very important to have a united nation and not a divided one. I think the people from the evacuees from Sudan can say a lot about their experience.
Well, they've been speaking about the experience, really. And then it's not important. Some of them have sent me, we not experience war here in Nigeria. You can only understand when you've been in those shoes before. So when you have bullets whizzing past your head, your explosion sounding close to you, and you've cut off from the world, no food, no water. Some of them passed through harrowing experiences before they were able to get to where they were eventually airlifted in Nigeria. We never experienced war in Nigeria.
Maybe not. All right, on the Punch newspaper this morning, the headline says, Assets Declaration. CCB tells Tinubu others to submit forms before May 29. And then the writers, asset declaration ongoing in 36 states, no swearing in without form submission. That's according to the CCB. And Bureau says the faulters risk removal from office. 40 Ogun politicians obtain forms. They have to submit their forms before May 29.
Yes, I mean, so the CCB is such that, it collates all of the public office holders, and I think top civil servants, really. I'm meant to fill the form, so you declare whatever assets you have before you start.
Yeah.
Though I've also heard that some people still do play games with it,
yes.
such that they put in assets that they do not have yet, because they plan to steal in government. And so, you do not have a house in Dubai. You say you have a house in Dubai, but then this is essentially to for you as a public office holder. This is what I have before entering into public office, so that at the end of your tenure, you're also expected to submit another form.
Yes.
Where you feel, so government that way and security agencies are able to scrutinize and know and see if something is wrong or not, anywhere there. I mean, that's essentially what a CCB issue is. And so all of those who are elected now are going to have to submit the forms for the 29th of May.
Yes.
And for those who are concluding their terms, and that's what the rider is about, that as a declaration is ongoing on, and now they're saying that there will be no swearing in without the submission of the form, and that defaulters risk removal from office. And for instance, in Ogun State, they say over 40 politicians
have obtained
the form already. Interesting.
We're talking about the fact that some impute assets that they do not have yet. I think that's on the CCB to really, do a follow-up on all of these assets, because if they don't, I don't think that obtaining forms and submitting them would really amount to anything at the end of the day. So it's really important to do so. But just below that story, we see fuel-laden tanker crashes, grounds Lagos-Ibadan expressway traffic, and that is on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper.
Top where you don't want to experience what guys experienced yesterday. It was a nasty experience. We've been having traffic, so yesterday's one was horrible, was horrendous. This tanker that fell on the road, it was such a bad experience. People left as early as 11, from these axes going to Lagos. We were still stuck as at 6 p.m. yesterday. It was that nasty, and people had to take alternative. At a point, the FRSA also had to issue a traffic advisory, advising people to take alternative roads, take Abeokuta wherever, take Shagamu, take Ikorodu, because it was blocked at both ends.
It could have been easy, again, because when you have to make a U-turn in a gridlocked...
No, you're not even going to make a U-turn. It's for those who are just coming.
Okay.
It's not for... No, those who are there were stuck already. And so people were on the same spot or in the same place for like 4 hours at a stretch. So whichever. And, because of the impatience of the Nigerian people also, people are all willing... so some people make detours, took one way, took the other lane, and everything just get locked down.
Yes.
So for hours on ending, that road was a mess yesterday. People ordinarily should have gotten to their destination in the afternoon or in the evening, got there later at night, before. But I do hope that, because it's not always about government. Sometimes our own attitude and disposition. So when there are traffic challenges like this, can we exercise some patience? But you had people in a hurry, patient, going through to the other lane. And what happened on a single lane, they generated in such a way that it became a lockdown on both lanes. Lagos, Ibadan, Lagos, everything was locked down yesterday. It wasn't a palatable experience, I must tell you. And
it's the people that end up suffering at the end of the day. All right, just below that story, FG lifts 888 Nigerians from Egypt, plans more evacuation, and still on Sudan. Several people are still being evacuated. 880 Nigerians are to be lifted, and more to come. And on page 3, Oshimen from Lagos street hawker to Serie A goal king. Well, Shima has been doing Nigeria proud in the league this,
And essentially, that's the story of his life, from a street hawker, pure water, Sache water.
It was really a rise from,
from grass to grace.
Yes. And passenger flights grounded as federal government shuts Abuja runway. And that's still on the crash that happened in Abuja. And that's on page 17 of the Punch newspaper. And just above the nameplate, subsidy removal, Nigerians may spend 8 trillion naira on petrol in 6 months. And that's that's on page 9. That's a story on page 9 there. And then protest as Northwest backs Akpabio for Senate presidency. Protest as Northwest backs Akpabio for Senate presidency. Several people have been pitching Akpabio for, Senate presidency.
Yeah, well, it seems to be the choice.
The Northwest.
Of the leadership of the party seems to be that anointed candidate. Politics is about wheeling and dealing. There are a lot of back channel moves. Remember that I was the first person to step down for Bola Tinubu at the primaries. So perhaps this is payback time, for him also. But then, like we've seen, the body language of some of the other members of the National Assembly is that we're not going to go where our leaders want us to go. So it is not a uhuru for him. Though the Northwest has the highest number of senators from the APC, let's see if he's able to get, because
apart from the APC now, there's the other.
Yeah, the others. But even from the APC, I think they have the highest number of senators from that side. So if he's able to convince them, and also he was a former member of the PDP himself. So he's definitely also still going to have some friends back in the PDP who may want to support him.
All right, on page 12, my ordeal with aggressive breast cancer. That's from Desiani Alison Madueke there. That's on page 12.
Very sad. I do hope we'll leave out the issues about a corruption trial. This is on a personal health level. And my disposition to it is when a man is down, or when someone falls, do not laugh. Yeah, so this is a healthy issue. Anybody can have a healthy issue, and so.
I'm surprised that she's agreeing to the fact that she has breast cancer or whatever cancer it is, because at the time she denied, the rumors that she did not have. At the time, she actually did.
That's interesting, because I remember Dele Momodu did an interview with excuse me, at the beginning of this administration, and then we saw pictures of her where her head was shaven, and it was evident that she had cancer then. And that's quite some years back at the beginning of this administration. And that was in London. You could see her head was shaven, and you could conclude that she just underwent chemotherapy at that time. So I'm surprised about the fact that you said she denied having cancer.
I think that was just at the inception of the whole thing. But it's also good, and yes, really, Nigerians need to be more empathetic, towards the plight of people. It doesn't matter what they've done or who they are. It's just plain, it's
all
just
right, so just before we leave that punch, the subsidy question, is one that the incoming Bola Tinubu administration will need to find a solution to. It's really a challenge. So we are told here that Nigerians may spend 8 trillion naira on petrol in 6 months. We wait to see how swiftly and how deftly the Bola Tinubu administration will manage that very question. But away from that, in the This Day newspaper, Dangote, my refinery can save Nigeria $10 billion in FX, generate another $10 billion in exports. That's on the front page of the This Day, just above the name plate, tasks, incoming administration and public-private partnership. I heard a report yesterday that the Dangote refinery will now be commissioned on the 22nd of May. If that is the case, and if production will start immediately, then I can assure you that subsidy will eventually be removed. Because it appears that this is what the Nigerian government has been waiting for. But unfortunately, it's also not going to be like, you know, an ease really for the Nigerian people, because Dangote is a private owner. It's a businessman. So we still expect, but perhaps the only thing is that we'll get to save lots of effects, have fuel, and then maybe government can divert the money saved from importation of fuel to some other things. And I think the arrangement is for the NNPC to supply to Dangote in Naira instead of dollars. I mean, whichever. The bottom line is for Nigerians to have access to fuel and also to have the purchasing power, to have the means really to buy it. So let's wait and see. I believe that the subsidy question will be answered this year with Dangote refinery coming on stream. Though I've also heard some experts raise concerns about if it's commissioned on the 22nd, are we sure it's ready for production immediately? Because in such a project, you know, of that magnitude, a lot of tests, leak tests, you know, propulsion tests, I mean, in engineering that you get to do to ensure that this particular facility is ready for use and safe, you know, for use. But that's that. Just above the nameplate of this day newspaper, PDP APC plotting to influence outcome of petitions as tribunal. That's PDP leveling allegation. PDP is saying APC is plotting to influence outcome of petition at tribunal. That proceeding starts today. We should stress. Excuse me. And under the nameplate, Badaru to Wiki, thank you for helping APC sabotage PDP in Rivers. It has interest.
Yes.
What comment?
And
I don't know how proud, you know, Wiki will be, you know, hearing that comment. I saw a picture, a video of that event, and you could see it was uncomfortable when that comment was made.
Well, I think Wiki called for all of these statements to be made. You know, Rivers was not exactly, you know, or safe, or what I put in now, did not come out well. You know, the optics didn't come out well for Rivers during the elections. And who's to blame? I think the governor and other, you know, stakeholders are to blame. All
right. Well, Buhari directs NUPRC to take over supervision of all crude oil exports terminals. Functions overlap with NMDPRA resolved. Well, these are some of the teething problems that you expect after the unbundling of the NNPC. The new units perhaps having to define their roles. But it's good that now that the overlap with another agency has been resolved. And to the National Assembly story that's common to almost all of the papers here, 10th National Assembly, APC and WC meets today to ratify consensus zoning. That's another angle to the race for who becomes a speaker and the Senate president. With the riders here, leadership tussle worsens as 68 senators elect to reject the deal. If 68 reject a deal and they are on one page, Canada deal has gone to bed. Well, group wants Tinubu party not to plunge themselves into crisis. Southeast senators caution president-elect against injustice. ACF dissociates South from ex-Niger Delta minister's endorsement. Okay. Well, interesting days. The
National Working Committee of the APC would be meeting again this week, and we hope that really they can reach a consensus and zone it rightly. Because they met, I think, sometime last week too, but they couldn't come up with any, you know, agreement, or they couldn't reach a consensus. But we hope that this will bring about something. But that twist, 68 of them rejecting that deal.
But you know, so you never say never in politics, because you know, there are several meetings in politics, but you never know the last meeting, because for the main meetings, when I tell you that somewhere we have a meeting with some of our other political associates by 4 p.m. today, I can swear, I can tell you that there was a meeting at 3 p.m. to determine the agenda for the meeting of 4 p.m.
4, yes.
And there will be another meeting by 5 p.m. to review what happened at 4 p.m. So if you are not in either of the meetings before and after, you did not attend any meeting. So these meetings, this meeting has not ended. There will be several other meetings before June.
Interesting.
When the eventual speaker and the Senate president and the deputies will emerge. But it just talks to the wheeling, the dealing, the individuals trying to outsmart each other, outwit each other here. And it's about power tussle, people laying a claim to power. And it's a defining attribute of humans. So it's not peculiar to us in Nigeria here. I remember when the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States, was supposed to be elected. Also, there were a lot of give and take. There were a lot of concessions, before the eventual speaker emerged. So this is not peculiar. Well, there's another picture here. There's a picture here, rather, on the front page of the This Day newspaper. Obi visits Soyinka. That's yesterday, and that's interesting. Obedience have attacked quite fiercely Wole Soyinka over his comments, cautioning them. But so I wonder how Obedience will react now that their candidate has gone to visit Wole Soyinka.
Yes.
Interesting.
And just like you said, meetings would always, birth different things.
Yes, definitely. So the last one on the This Day newspaper before we take a break is over this MAX air crash in Abuja. Crash landing, actually. Over 143 passengers escaped death as MAX Air crash lands in Abuja. Thankfully, no fatality. Thankfully, nothing, fatal about that crash landing. But there should be an investigation to ensure that whatever led to that is addressed, and we do not have a repeat of it, really.
Yes.
We've had quite a stellar aviation record, for some time now, and I think we should really sustain that. Really, gone are the days when we had to Soliso, we had a lot of those plane crashes. So whatever we need to do, let's review what happened here and ensure that everything is good.
Cool.
Thank you. Well, so that will be the papers for now. We'll take a short break. When we return, we're talking to our guest. Today is the beginning of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal, the PEPT, in Abuja. And we have about 5 parties submitting petitions against the victory of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but the 2 leading ones are the PDP and the Labour Party. We get to hear what the process is like and what you should expect. And for those who are also pushing for, why not? Let's have the conclusion of this case before we swear in the new president. We also get to hear about that, the legal trappings and the viability or the feasibility of that. That'll be after this break.
The Berlin Conference of 1884 defined the configuration of Africa, which hitherto existed as a continent of multiple kingdoms and empires under native rulers. The conference, otherwise referred to as Congo Conference, regulated European colonization and trade in Africa as initiated by German leader Otto von Bismarck. The Berlin Conference is often called the scramble for and partitioning of Africa, as each of the imperial powers carved separate portions of the continent for themselves without recourse to racial and cultural identities and differences. 137 years after the Berlin Conference was held, Africa remains a legitimized playground for European nations that sought to exploit its wealth and resources and manipulate its human capital to promote trades and investments of Western powers. Western Springer Television identifies Berlin Conference as a major event in history. Gbadamosi Adegoke Adelabu was a prominent figure in Ibadan politics and Western region before Nigeria's independence. He was a key founder of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, a political party that held lofty the torch of liberty for the two West African countries. He carved a niche for himself as a wordsmith and a creative speaker. The nickname Kwenkele was a natively corrupted version of peculiar mess, his bombastic English language style often used to score proceedings at the parliament. The author of Africa in Ebullition, a handbook of freedom for Nigerian nationalists, was Nigeria's Federal Minister of Natural Resources and Social Services between 1955 and 1956. He died in an auto crash on the 25th March 1958 at the age of 42. Western Spring Television identifies Adegoke Adelabu as a watershed character in history. The name Adolf Hitler exudes a gale of bile from millions of people who were victims of his autocratic rule and love, from fanatical supporters of his imperial aggression. Born April 20, 1889, at a small Austrian town sandwiched between Austro-German frontier, Adolf Hitler spent most of his childhood in Linz, the capital of Upper Austria. As a very prominent stakeholder in the horrific events of conflicts in Europe, Adolf Hitler could simply go off as the sole mover of the Second World War. 40 million Jews were murdered in the gas chambers of various Nazi camps on the orders of Adolf Hitler. Thousands of Adolf Hitlers still live in Germany today, but the majority of them are elderly and were named before the end of the Second World War. As the name pales into vanishing rarity, 13 children according to official records were named Adolf Hitler between 2006 and 2013. Western Spring Television identifies Adolf Hitler as a major character in history.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever expounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Can you imagine the feeling when you get your news as they break with facts and clarity? How
our news are reported as it is.
In Africa, and all those who masterminded the way it happened. We have.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us. It's on to Morning Spring, and it's coming to you from Western Spring Television, where we say it as it is. We have our guest joining us live on the line from the United Kingdom this morning. Today is the beginning of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal. About 5 different parties, we understand, have filed petitions against the victory of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president-elect and the candidate of the APC. And a lot of questions, people saying really they do not know, how the process will be. Well, we are here to explain to you how the process will go. And then for those who have also increasingly been asking that, why can't we have the conclusion of the cases before the swearing in of the president? We have legal practitioners joining us live on the line this morning from the United Kingdom. Dr. Misbah Lateef, who is a legal practitioner and a lecturer in the Faculty of Law at the University of Hull in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Dr. Misbah Lateef.
Thank you. Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Well, so, the petitions tribunal starts today, and we expect a lot of fireworks, legal fireworks, if you like. You mind explaining to us what this process will look like? How soon? And what are the processes? And how soon should Nigerians expect at the conclusion of the tribunal?
Well, the process today for me, I think, is just a climax, an important point in the judicial process that follow the conclusion of the presidential election on the 25th of February and all of that. And, the requirement of the law is that if a candidate who has participated in an election, is dissatisfied with the outcome of that election, they are allowed to approach, the courts. And in this particular instance, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, which is constituted by the Court of Appeal, you have all of this legal framework, particularly under Section 285 of the Constitution, then 134 of the Electoral Act. So subsequent to that election, parties have approached the court, they filed their petitions, they've exchanged their processes, the petitioner, like you rightly mentioned, the respondent, and all of them. So today is an important turning point in the process, that started maybe almost 2 months or thereabouts ago. And the process today, as I understand it, from the practice direction issued by the President of the Court of Appeal, is to undertake what we call a pre-hearing session. And that pre-hearing session could go on for maybe today, next tomorrow, and all of that. It could go on for as many as possible, like maybe 5 or less days. And the idea, therefore, is that what is going to happen today is not going to be a hearing proper in that case. Okay. So this is just a scheduling sitting where the courts will determine, like drawing a roadmap. Okay, we have this case, we have this number of petitioner, the court will ask each party, to present maybe the number of days. They may allocate days to the petitioner, for example, because you will also recall that under Section 285, this court has a maximum of 180 days, which is 6 months. And that 180 days started from the day the petition was filed, I think. So basically, what is going to happen today is to, draw maybe a work plan, if you like, or a roadmap, as I put it earlier, on what direction the court will take, in the coming days. Then after that is finalized, then we will have a definite hearing date where the petitioner by law will be required, to prove their case, because in this instance, the burden starts from the petitioner. to actually prove, that the election was not properly conducted, or that the winner was not legally returned, and all of that. So then thereafter, the respondent, of course, so it's going to be a very long journey, and of course, which will, be undertaken within the 180 days specified by law.
Well, an interesting journey ahead. But I should also introduce our other guest, who is also a legal practitioner based in Abuja, Prince Ademola Oyedokun, who joins us live on the line as well. Thank you so much for joining us on Morning Spring this morning on Western Spring Television, Prince Ademola Oyedokun.
Good morning, Western Spring TV. Good morning, Nigerians. And good morning, my brother, Dr. Misbah. It's my pleasure meeting you here.
Thank you, my prince. I wanted Femi to introduce you first. I saw you earlier and I said, this is my brother. And I wonder if Femi knows how. Welcome, Prince. I'm happy to meet you too. Yes.
No. Well, I do not know. Perhaps our doctor will do us well to explain to us at the end of the program.
Dr. Latif is my blood.
Okay, shall I mention it? I don't know.
Okay, please, just go ahead then.
Let's go on.
Okay, we are both from Ifon Osun, and he's my very senior lawyer, my brother actually. So we are both from Ifon.
Oh, interesting. So it's the Ifon chambers this morning. That's interesting. So let's.
And it's my senior at the bar.
Okay. Well,
Dr. Misbah. We are just colleagues. Thank you for the honor, sir.
Well, so Prince, explain to us also. The process starts today. Doctor just explained that this is going to be a long journey, 180 days for the tribunal, and then we understand that this is not the last stage. After this, then it goes to the Supreme Court. Explain to us what Nigerians should expect from the tribunal starting today.
My learned brother, my learned colleague, Dr. Latif, has actually summarized everything. Officially, they say the hearing commenced today. And as he rightly put it, when they say hearing, ordinary Nigerians will think that from today, the tribunal will begin to call witnesses of the parties. But according to what he said, which is in accordance with the party's direction, what is actually going to happen today are introductory proceedings, the preliminaries. Is if there are any pending applications, interlocutory applications, application for amendment, all those ones will be dealt with at this stage. When we say hearing commences today, what it actually means is that from today on, the justices who are presiding over the cases, there are about 4 or 5 cases of them, the one by the PDP, the one by the Labour Party, and some other parties too, who also filed petitions. From today on, the justices will begin to meet face-to-face with the lawyers of the parties, and all the lawyers will begin to confront one another as from today. And then they will start by what we call pre-hearing sessions. Pre-hearing sessions including determining pending applications and scheduling drawing roadmap as to timeline within which everyone will have to do in things. How many witnesses do you have as a petitioner? And you are given so and so dates within our 180 days to call your own. Within so time, you as respondent, first respondent, second respondent, third respondent, you are given so limited time within these 180 days to call your own witnesses to in defense. You are given so limited number of time to bring your final addresses before we then proceed to judgment. So all the parties, the court itself, the petitioners' counsel, the respondents' counsel, everybody meets today to decide all these things and draw the hearing schedule. And it's definitely that pre-hearing session that we call pre-hearing, where all this schedule will be drawn, definitely will not end today. As my learned colleague has said, it may take few days, maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, or it may take the entire of this week. And from there on, the hearing proper will begin. And what is hearing proper? He who has sat must prove. The petitioners have asserted that they have asserted certain facts that they believe, if they prove it, we give them victory or we nullify the election of the victorious party. Then they will come forward to prove their case by calling their witnesses, tendering their documents, and after they close their case, the old burden of if they have proved it or if they think they have proved it, then it will be the turn of the defense to call their own respective witnesses too and to tender their respective documents. Afterward, the court will adjourn for both parties to come and address the court as to why the case should be upheld. Then the court proceeds to judgment. That is what Nigerians should expect. And under Section 285 of the Constitution, all this should happen and end within 180 days, commencing from the date the notice of appeal, the notice of petition was filed. That is what Nigerians should expect.
Voila. So, for the petition, so in Prince's explanation, Doctor, now, he said that there will be certain of how many days we'll use to listen to petitions or bring in petitioners. Is it that the lawyers on both sides will be the ones to determine how it works? So it's going to be the judge or the judges of the tribunal that will lay it down. This is how many days you use to bring in petitioners or to consider evidences, and are all of the petitions going to be treated altogether within the same 180 days, or each petition will be treated separately and differently?
Okay, to start with, this is going to be an interactive session where parties will generally and the courts will be at liberty, to agree on certain things, convenience and all of that. Typically, for example, the petitioner might be asked to tell the courts how many witnesses they intend to call, how many days they intend to spend, and all of that. So the court will consider that and weigh it against the timeline they have. So based on that, the court will eventually, after party must have, I would say, discussed and interacted, the courts would then decide, okay, we allocate to you, the petitioner, X number of days to prove your case, and then thereafter the respondent will also have X. So it's going to be something that parties will all have to agree to, and as I said, within the time frame. Now, regarding the time to hear all of the petitions, well, the law requires that this must be heard within 180 days, as we said earlier. And since we have just one single panel, my thought on this is that all of these petitions will be heard together, of course, in their individual, I would say, status, but then within the same 180 days. So it is not the case that they will have 180 days to hear the petition of Alhaji Atiku or that of Mr. Peter Obi and then other parties. So everything will be heard by the same panel, as I understand, and then within the same 180 days. So this is really going to be a very Herculean task, for the justices who are going to sit on this case.
So if this petition tribunal would run through the period of 180 days, does it mean that there is no chance at all that the tribunal could stop the inauguration?
Well, you say, okay, that's actually one of the very, and I want to be very careful here, one of the very ridiculous call that people have made in the recent time. The court of law, are established by law, and we call them court of law, of course, and then the jurisdiction that each court has are also prescribed by law. So there is nothing under the Constitution of Nigeria or the Electoral Act which vests the Election Petition Tribunal, whether at the lower court, from the High Court, or the Court of Appeal in the case of the presidential election, or even the Supreme Court. So there is no any law which vests them with the, I would say, jurisdiction rather, to stop the inauguration. So legally speaking, that is something that is not possible. And people who make such call, I think they are just being ridiculous. There is no basis, and I say with authority, for the court to make an order staying, the inauguration of a new president, because the Court of Appeal or any court for that matter does not have that jurisdiction under our law. And a court will not exercise, a jurisdiction that it does not have. So it is not possible.
Well, so Prince, some of the other questions that some people will ask is, I know that you lawyers will ask for objections in the course of the proceedings. So these objections, for instance, will the court, in this case, the tribunal, rule on it immediately, or decide to rule it together alongside the judgment? How will such processes, pan out?
Objections to jurisdiction of the court, by general rule, should be determined first before the court proceed to hear the substantive matter. That has been the general position of the law in respect of general causes in Nigeria, because they say the jurisdiction of a court is the actual spinal cord of the court, without which the court cannot stand. So it will be a gross waste of time if a court of law embarks on hearing a case and devotes its time only to find out at the end of the day that it has no jurisdiction and everything that has been done in the case is an exercise in futility. But to this general rule is an exception of the election and election cases. Section 285 of the Nigerian Constitution is exhaustive, and it specifically provides that when an objection is raised to any proceeding, which is a pre-election or election matter, the ruling on it should be deferred, and it should be ruled together with the substantive suit. So if there is any objection to the status of any petition, the case will still be heard nonetheless, and the objection will be taken, and the judgment on the opinion of the court on the objection will be rendered alongside the substantive judgment. That is the position of the law in election and pre-election matters.
Well, so, I mean, this interview is like, Law 101 for those of us asking the questions and for our viewers back home. So I'd like to know, so as it stands, are the number of witnesses, are they determined before the petition, or is it in the course of the proceedings, that the petition, that the witnesses will be determined, or are they filed as part of the petition that the petitioners filed before the tribunal, Doctor?
The days of surprises are gone. Even in the ordinary course before the civil court, and even in criminal cases, when you are taking a case to court now, under the uniform rules, the rule that applies to all high courts in Nigeria, we no longer entertain any element of surprise. When you are taking a person to court, you list your witnesses. You give the list of your witnesses, you attach it to your processes, and then you even put what they are coming to say in court, you put it in writing and file it along with your originating processes. So when they come to court, they don't waste the time of court by starting to talk orally, line by line or verbatim, what they intend to say. You will have written it and filed it along with your process, and when they come to court, all they do is to say, I was in court on so day when this case was being filed, my testimony, my statement is on hold. I hereby adopt it. So that has saved the court a lot of times by listening to them to talk one after the other. What now takes the time of court is after they may have adopted their written statement on oath that has earlier been front-loaded. Now, the opposing counsel begins to cross-examine them verbally to test the veracity and the genuineness of what they have said. So the list of witnesses are front-loaded. The testimony of the witnesses are also front-loaded. So in an election petition, we already know how many witnesses a party has, because the evidence of those parties have already been summarized in writing, and it's already before the court on oath. They are just coming to adopt it and to be cross-examined by the opposing counsel.
Oh, all right. So, I mean, let's take this short break for, Doctor, I mean, you were coming, so I'm sorry. After the break, we're due for a break. Now, when we return, we'll come back, and then I also like to ask you if it's possible to amend whatever the petitioners have brought in before the tribunal midway into the proceedings, because I remember that after the petitions had been filed, we saw some things about, okay, there's new evidence, there's this new thing that we discovered. It was after that time that Premium Times reported that the APC actually, according to what was on the IREV, lost Rivers State. And so if those things were not included from the word go in the petition, can they be brought in, midway into the proceedings? But that will be after this break.
arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever expounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission. Even diffusion. Vast and fast. Detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
This iconic African presents the narrative of a man destined to exert an imperishable global influence in Western education. His was a story of a freeborn, captured and sold into slavery. He was born in Oshogun, a native Yoruba village near Iseyin in Okeogun axis of southwest Nigeria. Samuel Ajayi Crowther was the foundation student of Fora Bay College, Sierra Leone, the foremost university where the pioneer set of native Africans were educated. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's greatest contribution to humanity was his translation of the Holy Bible into the Yoruba language. The man who authored the Yoruba dictionary was also credited with the translation of English classic hymns into Yoruba and the Ekwere languages. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's private residence in Badagry, incidentally the first story building in Nigeria, is an archival museum dedicated to the memory of Africa's first bishop. Western Spring Television identifies Samuel Ajayi Crowther as a watershed character in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history. Funmilayo Ransom Kuti was an educationist and advocate of women's rights. She was recognized for her vitriolic comments.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us. It's on to Morning Spring, and it's coming to you from Western Spring Television, where we say it as it is. You can watch us live on Star Times channel 190 on the DTT platform, and also check us out on all of our social media pages, especially on YouTube at Western Spring Television. We still have two legal practitioners with us, Prince Ademola Yedokun joining us live on the line from Abuja, and Dr. Misbah Lateef, lecturer at the Faculty of Law, University of Hull in the United Kingdom, also joining us live on the line. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for staying with us. So, Doctor, before that break, you're about coming in, but I'd like you to add these to it. So, for the processes, what the prayers of the petitioners are, can it be amended midway, or new prayers brought into their petitions midway into the processes, Doctor?
All right, thank you. I'll just going to add a little point to what my learned brother said earlier, regarding the witnesses and all of that. So I was going to say that these processes, is what we call front loading. But beyond that, if you have seen the petition, you will realize that these parties actually filed several witnesses in their case. But what plays out in reality is that they don't get to call all of these witnesses. And if you have also read the petition, you will have seen that whatever they intend to say in court, they have front-loaded them, they have said them in advance, just like my brother has said. So, but basically, in the long run, they might just decide to call just only a few of them, given the time frame and all of that. Because as we say in law, a party is not actually bound to call all of its witnesses. So when you get to the trial proper, you just have to select, particularly when you have a time limit. Now, on the second point, you see, generally, we say an election petition or a petition of this kind, we say they are sui generis. And what we mean by that is that they have a unique status. They are not like regular cause or causes or cases that we do in court. And because of that uniqueness, they don't follow the normal rules that you have with the regular cases in court. So for this petition, therefore, there is no room whatsoever to amend anything. It is closed, and I say with authority, finally closed. Not even at a pre-hearing today will it be possible for a party to say they want to amend it. You cannot amend the petition. You cannot add anything. Well, you may want to remove from it, I don't know. But unfortunately, that window is shut permanently against the petitioner and even the respondent. So parties, we have to rely on their case as they have presented them to the court. So
I'm sorry, Doctor. Not even if new evidences are discovered or, something quite substantial about the case, it came up midway into the case, you're saying nothing can be done to amend the prayers.
Well, in this particular case, as I said, because we say it is sui generis, the law does not actually allow that. And whatever the law does not permit cannot happen. However, there is a little window where it is possible during the pre-trial process or hearing for a party to actually obtain an order of court, maybe to go and carry out an inspection or something. So that is something I know is possible. But that is not to say a party can actually alter their prayers or their petition in any way. The court may, in the course of proceeding, grant an order, or at this pre-trial stage, okay, we allow you to go and inspect so and so to bring something. So I don't know. But then I guess my brother will speak more to this. So, but the point is that you cannot really amend your petition. It is over.
Prince Yedokun, so, you have more to add, and also to add to that is, if tribunal is 180 days, after the tribunal it moves to the Supreme Court, isn't it? How many days do we have at the Supreme Court?
At the Supreme Court, the court of trial, when they have 180 days, that is in a presidential election petition tribunal, they have 180 days at court of first instance, which is the court of appeal in the circumstance. And on the appellate court, according to Section 285 of the Constitution, they only have 60 days before the Supreme Court. And then let me also quickly further make some comments on the issue of right to amend or possibility of an amendment. In 1999, under the around 1999, the Electoral Act in place in 1999, and subsequently, amendment to election petition was possible. It was very, very possible. And it, though in the practice direction for that purpose, provision for amendment was not made therein. But the rules of election petition then made reference that amendment can be done under the Federal High Court Civil Procedures rules. But since 2010, paragraph 14 and 50 of the first schedule of the Electoral Act balances was one that allowed amendment. But under Section 32 of Electoral Act 2002, okay, under the current one, there's no room for amendment. And I remember on 24th May 2019, in the case of APC versus Marafa, the provision of Section 14.2 of the first schedule of the Electoral Act 2010 provides that there is no room for amendment. And that provision in 2010 has been sustained by the current one. So your election petition within 21 days within which you have it to present after election, once you present it, it's like a rock of Gibraltar. It cannot be shifted, the position cannot be changed. You are bound by your pleading, that is the allegations of fact in your petition. You cannot add to it. The application to inspect, all those ones are not amendment. If what you inspected has not been referred to in your petition, you cannot even bring it to use it, even you may want to inspect it. So the amendment cannot be done. It's not possible. You are bound by your pleading. Yes. Because according to my brother, which is correct, it is sui generis. It's on a class of its own, unlike other regular cases.
So for context, if I may also add, all of those things that you saw on social media, Ivan River State and other places, unfortunately, those are just for sensations. There is no way any petitioner or even respondent can bring those things to their cases if they are not already part of their petition. Even if it is found today that, let's say, the result declared in a particular state was actually outright false. Unfortunately, that is, there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Well, so, earlier on you said the burden of proof. I'm not sure if that's how you put it. I don't know if I get the exact wordings right. Yes. Okay. So, that the burden of proof is on the petitioner to prove. Is that not, I don't know how to put it. Does that make for fair adjudication? I think that's also what's obtainable in other parts of our law also. How do you explain that? Is the petitioner that needs to prove that what happened, did not happen or whatever? What does that say about our laws, and how do you explain it, Doctor?
Well, just like my brother rightly said earlier, the point here is that, the starting point for me is to note that we practice what we call an adversarial system in Nigeria. And by that, parties literally go to court as enemies, in quotes. And then the court sits in between, as a arbiter and all of that. So in that case, a party who goes to court to assert a position and who want the court to to establish otherwise, generally in law has a burden to establish that fact. And for me, I think that is logical. However, I think there are also the issue of fairness to the petitioner, as some people have also said that if you look at the humongous challenges that are associated with proving a petition, shouldn't we push this burden to the electoral body, INEC for example, or to the people who are laying claim to having won, to actually come and show that they win. So for me, it's actually, it's neither here nor there. But I think logically it's sound to expect that the party who assert should prove it. And if you look at the wordings of the provision of section 134 of the Electoral Act, which specify the ground for which a petition may be brought, it says, for example, I think the first paragraph says the petitioner claims that the person that was returned maybe has not been returned validly, or that so if a petitioner is challenging what I call a status quo, a current position, it follows naturally or logically that person should come and prove that what exists does not exist. But then I think there are ways also to attach to the other issue of whether this should entirely be the burden of the petitioner. But basically, it is the burden of the petitioner to prove that the respondent did not win. So then the respondent, the burden will also shift. If the petitioner has done the basic in proving that, then the burden shifts also to the respondent, to prove whatever.
All right, Prince.
So the issue of burden of proof.
Okay.
Yes.
Apart from the doctrine of burden of proof that is usually rests on the person who asserts, one may also say, is it not the INEC now that has asserted that a certain party has won, and the party also asserts that he has won? Why don't we start with them, right? But there is this also part of our law that we call presumption of regularity. The INEC's conduct of the election is an official act. And once an official act has been done in substantial compliance with the way it ought to be done, it is believed that it has been properly done. As it is now, INEC has declared a certain party as the winner. So an INEC is a public institution that has done an official act. So it is presumed that INEC has done its work and it has been properly done. Now, if you now think they have not properly done their work or it has been regularly done, is it not logical that you bring evidence first to show that what we think has been properly done, look at this one, it has not been properly done. You are the one now that is asserting that it has not been properly done, that APC or Bola Ahmed Tinubu has not won. You come now and show us first, because you are the one who is asserting now against the presumption of regularity. It is presumption of regularity that everything has been properly done that is working in favor of the president-elect under our law, that he has to be sworn in first, notwithstanding the cases against him. So if you now think nothing has been properly done, you come first, you bring proof. It is when you have brought the proof and you have established it, now you are relieved of that duty because you have discharged your duty to prove that it has not been properly done. Then the burden now shifts to the person to defend, to bring his own evidence to neutralize. That's your so-called proof that it has not been properly done, to show that it has actually been properly done. So he who has that must prove. And the person who proves first here now is the petitioner, who is challenging the presumption of regularity in favor of INEC and the declared winner. So to me, it is logical that the petitioner goes first to prove his case. There is also a presumption of being in possession. If you are found in possession of something, it is presumed to be yours. Anybody who wants to contend that it is not yours is the person who now has to prove that there is evidence of ownership elsewhere against you, which is prior and stronger than yours. So INEC or APC are in possession of the certificate of return now, and it is presumed that it is theirs. It is the person who is challenging them that we have to prove with evidence that the winning or the victory does not belong to APC, or that INEC has not done the proper thing. It is logical and it is not against fair hearing. In fact, that is the fairest thing to be done, in my own humble opinion.
All right. Okay. So, Doctor, on what grounds will the petition be eventually determined? I've had lawyers talk about non-substantial or substantial compliance with the Electoral Act. And I've also, heard arguments about if violence, ballot snatching or shooting, if those are grounds that could be argued before the tribunal, before the court, and as basis for agreeing to some of the demands of the petitioners. Perhaps you help us understand the grounds, especially that term, substantial non-compliance. How do you prove that? Is that the grounds upon which the petitions will be determined? Maybe if you also help us to look at what it used to be in the past and if it still obtains now.
Okay, I think fairly well, the ground to challenge an election petition has been consistent, I would say, since 2010, Electoral Act, and up to now, not much has really changed. And if you check Section 134 of the Electoral Act, 134(1) to C, I think, the first ground there, for example, is to say that the person who contested, I'm just summarizing now, was not qualified. The person who has been returned as a winner was not qualified to contest that election. The second one is to say that the conduct of the election has not complied, with the requirement of the Electoral Act. I'm also summarizing. And then the third one is to say that the person who was returned as a winner was not validly returned. So these are general grounds, upon which a petition may be brought. However, each of these grounds has required elements under the law, which a petitioner is expected to put forward. In other words, the elements for each of these grounds are not, I would say, uniform. You have different elements to prove, for example, that somebody was not qualified. Maybe their qualification based on whatever the Constitution has specified, as basis to contest for that office. The second one, if you say that the election has not been conducted with, compliance with the Electoral Act, you also have to state what specific provision of the Electoral Act has not been complied with. But above all, there is the provision of Section 135, which says that even after examining all of the evidence, a court will not nullify or invalidate an election merely based on the Section 134 ground, unless, such non-compliance is substantial. And I think this is where the controversy always lies. Controversy because you need to determine what constitutes substantiality. How do you determine whether infractions that have taken place in places are substantial enough, to taint the outcome of that election? If, for example, we have conducted an election in 176,000 polling units all over the country, and then you had, let's say, ballot box snatching, you've even had violence, you've had all manner of crises, let's say in 20,000 polling units. What fraction of 176,000 is 20,000 polling units, and how substantial is that when you compare it with the old mix? So this is usually a question of facts for the court to determine, so that in the long run, the court was not expecting that there will be a perfect election. And then there has been none anywhere around the world. If you ask me, even in the US, as we speak now, Donald Trump is still contesting the election he reportedly lost a few years back, almost 4 years ago now. So the point is that in the long run, whether the court will cancel an election or invalidate the return of a winner will depend on that provision of Section 135, which is normally referred to as substantiality. Well, so where the body for me lies for the petitioner. We really have to prove that, yes, we have not only established that infractions occurred, we have also established that they are substantial enough to cancel this election or something like that, or to invalidate the return of a winner. So it's a very, very Herculean task.
Well, so will the substantiality be proven on the basis of spread or the severity of the incident? Or would that be left to the discretion of the judge?
Well, that's why I say it's a question of fact, really. A question of fact is that the law has not set any parameters as to determine substantiality. The court will have to put everything maybe in an imaginary scale, if I can put it that way. And that's why I've used figure here. If you say you had election in 176,000 units, and then you had infraction. And if you want me to put maybe a figure to that, for me, if you have had election in 176,000 polling units, and then you've had crisis, let's say, in just 20,000 polling units, which I think is not even the case here, going by the petitions that we have seen, I don't think that will be substantial enough. So it's not really a question of the spread per se. It is a question of substantiality.
How impactful it is on the entire process?
How impactful, that is the word. How impactful is it such that if we consider this infraction, there are so
victory in favor of anybody?
Exactly. If, for example, election was not held in a particular place, and if that election was held, it would probably change the figures if it had gone in a particular way. So these are the kind of things the court will consider. So impact. What is the impact of these infractions?
Okay. So it is the court that determines that, or the petitioner?
The court actually, based on what the petitioner has put forward, all the parties, after all the parties have made their case, then the court will look at them. And that's why I say it's a question of fact, not law. The court will have to look at the case as it is, pragmatically. So can we say reasonably or logically that these infractions, are substantial enough or are impactful enough, to warrant a cancellation of the result, or maybe a withdrawal certificate of return from a winner who has been returned by INEC. So it's a very, very big one, and this is why people have said to establish, the case of a petitioner is actually a very, very Herculean one. It's not an easy one anywhere.
Well, so, just before we let you two go, I guess we just delve into the controversy about why some people are asking that the president-elect not be sworn in before the conclusion of the process. Maybe also take us down memory lane from 1999, the length of time that's been used to deal with petitions. I know we can't go into the nitty-gritty of the prayers of the petitioners, but tell me, for those making such arguments, what do you think has given rise to it? Because I remember following through from the beginning of the Fourth Republic, that there's always been cases in court. The winner, has always been sworn in while the case is drag on. In fact, I think it used to take like 2 or 3 years before. But what do you think has given rise to this continued agitation this time? The last of which was from, Bishop Onayekon and some of others who have made such comment and saying, why can't we dispense with these cases first before we swear in the president-elect? Let me start with Prince.
Thank you very much. I read something, I read a statement by one of our senior colleagues, Chiva Ahamba, who said yesterday that the Supreme Court had long laid the issue of whether a president-elect should be sworn in to rest when he was handling the case of Buhari versus Obasanjo. He did say that he made that statement. Maybe that could have been an interlocutory application during the proceeding. Then he said the Supreme Court had laid it to rest, that is not possible. And there are many things that are found in written laws, and there are things that are done by convention. And by practice, over the years, they have become law. Since 1999, which president-elect had not been sworn? Which president-elect had not been taken to court? None. All president-elects since 1999 till date has ever been taken to court. Which one of them had not been sworn in before the cases were determined? None. Which governor had not been taken to court in this country? All the governors that were taken to the court in this country, which of them had his swearing in suspended pending the determination of the tribunal case against them? None. So why now? Well, there's nothing wrong in people calling for changes. But if I am asked, the changes people are calling for in the circumstance in the present day, to me, I don't support it. I don't support it. If you say you have your trust in the judiciary, then let them do their job. Let them do their job. To me, being careful in choosing my word like my brother did, to me, it is ridiculous. Calling that, saying that, then are you going to now extend the tenure of the current president? Come on. It is not possible, and it's not going to happen.
Okay, doctor, so,
The current president ends on the midnight of May 28th, and by May 29th, the president-elect becomes the president de facto and de jure. He will be sworn in.
Dr. Lateef.
That's the position of our law.
Okay, I think my brother has, perfectly summarized that. We need to look at it from two perspectives. I think there are people who are making this genuine call because they really want improvement in our electoral process, because we cannot deny the fact that we should ideally determine these cases before a president or governor or whoever is sworn in. However, on the other side, there are people who are making this call, and I would say mischievously, yes, partisan, even among lawyers, among the social, the CSO and all of that. So, for those people, I think the political parties, spokespersons, have been responding to them adequately, because those calls were made clearly based on their own partisan interest. So why the sudden interest? And if you ask them, they've extended the same thing to video or televisioning of the proceeding, which I don't actually have a problem with. But you see, this is a time where we understand and we could see clearly the motive. So because of the motive, which are so glaring, people have also, tended to, criticize them. So, but in the whole mix, I think going forward, and if you ask me, because you talked about history earlier, if you look at how we have progressed, particularly from 2010, we've had 2010 Electoral Act, we've had 2011, I think, then 2015, and now 2022. Each of this cycle, we've actually gained, and I think we have improved on our system. So it used to be 3 years, 4 years before, and I guess now that we have 180 days, I guess the next cycle will be that we will be able to determine this case or cases before a president or governor is inaugurated. So if we look at our trajectory, it is not that we have not really gained. I think we have made tremendous progress, and things can only be gradual. So I think we should see it in that context. But it is truly ridiculous, the call that people are making now. It is not even possible. There is no way these cases can be decided before May 29. There is no way we will not have a president inaugurated as a matter of law. And there is nothing anybody can do about that.
Well, so I mean, the example that's often been cited of Kenya, I'd say Kenya had their own election also not long ago, and then their cases were dispensed with. You mind explaining to us, the differences between the Nigerian legal system and the Kenyan legal system, such that they were able to deal with petitions surrounding the outcome of the elections before their president was sworn in? Maybe, I think, in a matter of weeks.
Well, in Kenya, I think they did it in 14 days, or maybe 30 days, if I can recall correctly well, but I think 30 days actually. But you see, people tend to make, this, I would say, wholesale comparison without looking at the details. What is the population of Kenya to start with? Population of Kenya is, I think, around 50 million or thereabout, 54 million, compared to Nigerian population. Two, although we operate the same legal system, common law, the election petition in Kenya starts and ends at the Supreme Court. That may well be the future for Nigeria. I mean, they don't have 3 cycles of courts like we have in Nigeria, aside the population issue. But the point is that some of these comparisons, they do not actually go if you consider the variables, the population, the time frame, the number of petitions you have before the court, even from the one we are looking at now. If you look at the humongous paper that have been filed within this court or before this court, you will even pity the judges that will do these cases in 6 months. So, but really, for me, I do not have any issue with this, idea of futuristic improvement to our process. We will continue to improve, like I said earlier, and we should all encourage any reform, that will improve on our system. But we'll get there. That's what I think.
Well, so Prince, finally, do you agree with Dr. Lateef that this document, the Electoral Act, needs constant reviewing? You remember, the Ways report, the Inamani report, all of those interventions we've had. Do you think we'll need to do another, review of the current Electoral Act for us to get better and perhaps incorporate some of the complaints and concerns of those who are making such concerns now and to get it
actually evolving, and our evolution is for the better. He has he just reviewed the past Electoral Acts and the improvements we have made over the years. we are moving towards perfect electronic voting, e-voting. Won't you like it if in future now you don't even have to go out of your house before you vote? So, but you crawl, you sit, then you crawl, then you stand before you move. Development is a gradual thing. We had elections in 1999, in 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, 2019. Now we had in 2023. I'm very sure coming election in 2026, when is it going to be? It's going to be better than the one we have now. Because by now we'll have seen our lapses and we'll have made another improved amendment to our electoral acts and regulations and guidelines. So we don't just go to Kenya and pick Kenya. We have different factors. As my brother said, population is there. The number of candidates is there. How many petitions went to court in Kenya? Presidential election alone in Nigeria, courts are busy. All other cases are suspended now nationwide. Most high court judges now have been sent to states to go and attend to a governorship election, House of Assembly election, House of National Assembly election, petition tribunals. What happened to all other cases? We will continue to improve as we identify our problem.
All right.
And I believe we are better for it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Prince Ademola Oyedokun, legal practitioner based in Abuja, who is also from Osun here, and his brother and legal colleague, that's Dr. Misbah Lateef, joining us for this time from the United Kingdom. And jokingly, I said earlier on that it's been an fun chambers this morning.
We are so proud of our community. Thank you too for bringing us together here this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, your colleague too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so that's the show this morning. We appreciate you for being a part of our world. I'll be back tomorrow for another edition of Morning Spring. So please do keep tabs. Stay with us on all of our channels, on TV, on radio. We'll bring you up to speed about what's happening at the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal. Also, hopefully this month, we expect to have a final decision on what happens here in Osun State as regards the governorship election. We expect that the Supreme Court to make a pronouncement on who actually is the validly elected governor of Osun State. That's the show today. Femi Olanikwekun is my name. Ask you to have a great day.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm Temitope Ajijola Oluola. Good day.